Welcome to the Clarity Digital Podcast. In this episode, I'm thrilled to chat with my longtime colleague and friend, Mark Kapczynski. Mark has a fascinating background, blending his experience as a seasoned CMO with the mindset of a serial entrepreneur. We dive into go-to-market strategies, the power of retention, and even how to cut through the noise with AI. Let's dive in. Mark, welcome to our show.
Hey, Al. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you for making the time for us. For our audience, if you don't mind introducing yourself, give us background about pretty much your professional experience.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll first say that I've been a serial entrepreneur as well as a corporate employee. And I guess when I get tired of doing one, I switched back and forth to the other. So I did a startup right out of college and sold it, and then went to work for Microsoft for 7 years and got tired of Microsoft and did another startup that was venture backed and sold that, and then went to work for Experian, that's where you and I connected, and then tried my hand at Yodlee, and then got involved with a number of companies as CMO, as you pointed out. And it's been an interesting ride to go see the world from the lens of a corporate employee, a CMO, and as an entrepreneur. And somehow I piece all those three things together.
And I think that probably what makes you a good CMO is because your entrepreneurial background. It's not just a corporate background. So you have some real life experience about what it takes to be successful. Obviously, sold the company. So that's really good information. What are you working on these days? Are you working for somebody? You're running your own agency?
Yeah. So now I run my own, it's more of a consulting business called Control Media. I guess I waver between, am I an agency or a consulting firm? But I think it's more of a consulting firm that just specializes in marketing and go-to-market strategy. And then I guess what we tend to be good at is the execution of it. We typically get called in on projects where companies are trying to figure out either how to grow a new business or bring back new energy into existing lines of business and figure out new ways to generate revenue with like maybe old assets or assets that are been untouched for a while. And they call us in to figure out like, what can you do with this thing kind of question. And then we come up with some usually creative business ideas as to, okay, how do we transform the product? How do we transform the business? And then figure out, okay, what's the go-to-market with that to execute on the plan? Because I always like to say a vision without execution is called hallucination. And that's a famous quote from Thomas Edison. So I always lived by that. But a lot of people can create great PowerPoints, but you got to actually put it to work and deliver on it. And I think that's something that I've been known for my whole career is that I get stuff done.
That's awesome. And I think that's the missing piece between successful marketing campaigns and the ones that are not successful is not having a proper go-to-market strategy. For example, I noticed the clients that we have, the ones that have a CMO or a fractional CMO, and we do a lot of the execution. We run the Google ads, we do SEO for them, social. They tend to be a lot more successful. The friction is a lot less. We enjoy the project a lot more. That highlights the need to having a really good go-to-market strategy. So if you don't mind elaborating a little bit more about how important it is and how different businesses can go about it, and is it a lot different between B2C or B2B? That would be great.
Sure. Yeah. And actually, I'd just first like to say that part of any go-to-market strategy is you're going to need a team. And that team can be in-house, out-of-house, agencies, contractors, whatever. But the thing is, it's got to be one team. And I've always been fond of working with contractors and agencies and so on, but it's about bringing them together and treating them just like they're part of the team, not, oh, you're an outsider, so I treat you differently. And that's how I like my clients to treat me, is I just want to feel like I'm part of the team. And I think when you create that healthy environment, everyone can be successful. Like I know a lot of folks just treat agencies as like, we pay them money, so they have to do everything we tell them to do. And so it's really important to get the most out of people. You have to have a positive relationship that works both ways. And again, that's whether it's working with agencies or contractors, et cetera. It's make sure everyone feels like they're part of the team and rewarded as such.
Sure.
So I'll say that. I'll get off my soapbox there. But I think a lot of people, a lot of businesses, they're desperate for revenue and growth, right? Maybe they're falling behind, their stock price is low, they're not meeting private equity firms' expectations. And so there's this tremendous pressure on, we need to grow, we need to generate more revenue. So how do you do that? And I think that becomes the real part of the answer to the go-to-market is you need to figure out what are the channels, what are the different ways you're going to execute on your plan. So you have to have a plan. And I know I work with a lot of folks and it's like, I don't even know how to do that. So you really have to start at the beginning and come up with that strategy, really know who your customers are, where you're going to find them, and then build that into your go-to-market playbook, which becomes, here's the channels that we're going to operate in, here's how we're going to reach them. And a big piece that gets overlooked is the messaging. Because again, a lot of people think, oh, I just got to have ads, run the ads. It's what are you going to put in the ads? And a lot of people overlook that. So part of my playbook is start with strategy, figure out messaging. And we use something we call a messaging framework that we do for all of our clients. And so we come up with that like little package, and then it makes it easier for you to start to execute on. And it also helps when you're working with your agency partners or contractors, because now everyone knows the same thing about what you're going for. So a lot of go-to-market isn't so much the execution, it's in the planning and the thoughtfulness that goes up front to set yourself up for success on the execution side of things.
And
a big piece of that too, with messaging, it's really figuring out who's your ideal customer profile, that ICP, and truly what are the personas of your customers. And so most people go, oh, here's my audience segment. So it's males, this is, what do they do? What roles do they have? What, kind of titles do they have? You need to understand truly who you're going after, and then figure out where those people exist online so that you can go find them and be able to try to get them in the funnel and start working them through to close. It's interesting. I was working with a consumer products company earlier this year, and that produced mostly products for women. And it was really interesting because a lot of the products seem to be perfectly applicable to guys like you and me that travel.
Yeah.
And I was like, how come you're not marketing to men? So it's really interesting how people, I think once they get into this mode of how they're acquiring customers or where they're acquiring, like that's all they can see. And it's hard to take that step back and go, maybe there's a different way, or maybe there's a better way. Some of my friends and mentors in the industry always told me, turn off Facebook ads for a day and see what happens. And does it make a difference or not? Sometimes you have to do things like that to just get a real sense of where you're at in your programs to get a better feel for what should we be doing next. I worked with a client and literally they were spending thousands per month on Facebook, and I just wasn't seeing the results. I literally told them, let's turn off Facebook for this entire week and let's just prove to ourselves if it's working or not, because I don't think your data's right. And sure enough, like there was no material volume difference in their orders. And the CEO at the end of the day is, you just say it'd be like $600,000. Yeah, let's put that money to use somewhere and grow the business. And then that's where you develop that go-to-market strategy of let's really know who the customer is that we're trying to get, or who the influencers are that we have to influence and advocate to, and then be able to execute.
Is there a difference between your methodology when it comes to B2B marketing strategy versus B2C?
Really, I think, it's still just marketing and customer acquisition at the end of the day. The timelines and the funnels are different, but the strategy is relatively the same. If you don't know who your customer is, that ICP, you're never going to be successful. So it's really find and figure out your ICP, figure out where those people are and where they exist online, and then go into those channels to try to reach them. And then also reach the influencers that influence the B2B. It's just a longer sales cycle, right? Sure. So there's more touch points and more things than a direct transaction, but they're all relatively the same approach. It's just with B2B, you have a longer time frame and there's more touch points that you have to worry about. And ultimately in B2B, you have to get to the right buyer too. You could have the people that you're marketing to and interacting with and engaging with be internal champions, but they're not the actual buyer. So you have to help figure out in B2B who's the buyer, where direct consumer, it's one-to-one with the buyer, and you just got to convince them to purchase in the moment.
Yeah, I think they call it the buyer's committee on the B2B, where there's like a bunch of people you need to target. And one challenge I find in B2B marketing is that different companies have different titles for different people. Like one company, I could be a director, another company, I could be a senior manager, another company, I could be like a CMO, or I've never been a CMO, but like something else, right? And
Al, you're always a CMO.
Thank you for that. In one of our calls, you mentioned something about retention. We're going to switch over to like more of a strategy, marketing strategy. You talk about retention being a strategy. I think a lot of marketers are so focused on acquisition that they don't think about retention.
Yeah. So this is going to be my big pitch for next year for folks, is I'm working on my relationships with clients. We'll take it more from the direct to consumer perspective. It certainly applies to B2B as well. But in direct to consumer, especially with subscription oriented businesses and D2C, e-com type of businesses, like people are so focused on the new acquisition. And like you and I were like, I don't know if you recall this, but at Experian, the same way. It was like everyone on the team was focused on new acquisition. And when I was there, we had one guy who was like, and his name was Derek, who was like, Derek, you own retention. And it's like, how does one guy for nearly $1 billion business own retention? And to me, that just points to people overlook retention, or they think of it. Companies I was advising this year had this issue of, oh, we have a tool. It's, oh, we have Klaviyo that sends out emails, or this other tool that sends out regular SMS messages. It's okay. A tool isn't a strategy and a methodology. It's simply what it is, a tool that helps get a job done. And so retention is more complicated, and it partially why I like to talk about it right now. More CMOs have to evolve into understanding and owning, because especially with like subscription businesses, like you and I work for Experian subscription businesses, there's a key component in there called payments. And most CMOs of companies with subscription businesses do not deal in payments or worry about payments. Yet payments and the payment technologies and the payment rails are incredibly important as part of keeping someone a customer. And so I have these 5 pillars of retention. The Mark Kapczynski's 5 pillars of retention are communication, the product and user experience, the transaction or payments, as we're talking about, community, and value. It's really optimizing across those 5 key pillars. And what I've been telling my friends, fellow CMOs that have these like digital subscriptions, like if you optimize around retention, it's the easiest way to get some growth revenue right away. Instead of trying to find new channels of new customer acquisition, that just go after the existing base that you have and get them to either upsell or renew or buy again, if it's just a D2C e-com type of transaction. But retention is the easiest way right now to get new growth revenue that you're looking for. It's just sitting there. And I think either CMOs don't think about it or don't like dealing in retention, or they think low of it. I don't know what the case may be. The thing is, the CMO's got to take responsibility for retention just as much as they do on new customer acquisition. And the more and the faster that they get it, they'll see there's like low hanging fruit and revenue there.
Let's say I'm a young CMO and my goal is to grow the company's revenue, but you have people working in a company for a long time that are in charge of the customer service, that are in charge of other departments. And a lot of the things that you're mentioning is their territory, right? And the retention.
But that's exactly my point. Why? You know, like why does payments fall under finance when the payments engine is a messaging vehicle? And typically the payments engine is the one that's actually messaging to clients because it has an email component to it. Right. It's typically the engine that's embedded on the website to get people to enter a new credit card if their credit card declined, or it's the one that's doing retries and has a huge impact on user experience, which then leads to conversion. So that's exactly my point, which is like, why shouldn't a CMO own payments? I did a project for this gaming company last year. And I took over payments because it's like, why does this report into finance? Finance just wants to know the numbers and that they got paid, but they don't know how to manage the payment system because payments is tied to retention. If we can't get people to renew, if we can't process more credit cards, we lose all those people. And as tied to it, I bucket my pillar transactions because it's not just the payment system, but it's also the monetary and pricing factors. What are you going to charge for a product in different countries? We had a subscription business that was global, and we couldn't charge the same price in the States as we did in other countries, right? Other countries don't have the same kind of disposable income. So understanding how to set pricing levels and discounts and payments, and then it goes even further, which is like payment types. So in, Brazil, you have a lot of different payment types. They have digital wallets, like something called Boleto. And if you don't take Boleto, you're losing like probably 50% of your revenue opportunity. And so that's where, again, it's like, who's supposed to solve that problem? Finance isn't going to know that. If the CMO doesn't do it, who else is going to figure that out?
How do you approach it though? How do you go to finance and say, hey, I think this is supposed to be my thing?
It's pretty much that straightforward. I know more about this than you do.
Yeah.
And honestly, usually they're like, thank God, here, take it. Like
most of the time they're like,
they're dealing with way more important things than how to optimize a payment system. That's not their skill set. They do it because it's just tied to finance. Like another thing tied to this is this gaming company was an international business. And a lot of our charges were all rolled into the United States, but then we had to transfer funds to Canada and other places as we're paying huge bank fees, on this. So they just know money's being transferred from one bank to another. The CMO is the one that knows where all the transactions are occurring and how they can potentially help optimize that. Doesn't mean you're doing it in a vacuum, but you have to work with finance on some of the stuff because you need access to bank accounts and so on. But all my point is the marketing team and the e-com team needs to know more about things than just, hey, we processed an order and I'm done. Can't be that way.
I can totally relate to this. I felt like I became a better marketer where I was not so much concerned about just conversions and leads, and I actually went a little bit more in detail and figure out, hey, what happened to my leads and why did it not convert? Why did it not become an opportunity or customer? And then, like you mentioned earlier, maybe there's issue with our pricing, right? Maybe we're too expensive, or just there's a problem with the transaction process. Another thing that I think this happens a lot in SaaS, including some of the common projects you and I worked on, is that support document is such an afterthought and it's not part of the marketing. I think there's so much content you can provide. Is like natural FAQs and things like that can really help you generate a lot of good traffic. But a lot of companies tend to not put that within marketing. They give it to somebody else, and that's not even optimized or looked after. Sometimes they sit on another website. I think marketers should own the support content that is visible to the customers. It's part of retention, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's ultimately up to the CMO and team to go, for lack of a better phrase, take it. If you're not willing to go after it and go get it, then it's a little bit of your own fault for not benefiting from it. And no, you're right. What I'd also say to that is the vice versa is true, which is this is why I'm a huge advocate for this like messaging framework stuff at the beginning. Is the customer service department doesn't know what they don't know. And so it's important to share with them, here's how we're explaining the product, here's how we're messaging it. So it's important that the marketing team creates the messaging framework, but then shares it throughout the organization so that the support team is now really an extension of marketing, and it'll help them be successful too. A lot of these things, it's not so much a take from them, give to it. It's really more of collaboration. And a lot of times it's just, there's no one to facilitate or lead the collaboration. And I think that's an opportunity for CMOs to get in there and be like, look, ultimately we're about making money. How are we going to make money? And how do we get this whole ship working the same way? And CEOs are busy, their stuff, right? Ops are handling their stuff. Finance is handling their stuff, right? So it's who's in charge of pulling all the rest of the stuff together. And that's I think both an opportunity and a challenge to CMOs. Someone needs to wrangle all this stuff, so go do it.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I was doing an SEO audit for someone a few months ago, a relatively large company in an internet security space that had completely pulled out the entire support because somehow the marketing team thought I was overshadowing the marketing content. And what happened is they lost a lot of SEO traffic and SEO leads. I did an SEO audit. I'm like, you lost a lot of pages. You lost, and those pages had backlinks to them. So they were important pages because they were support pages. People were linking to them. And as you and I, we both know links are really important for SEO. So now they don't exist anymore. Yes, you did do the redirection, but you still lost a lot of content. That's probably why SEO traffic is down. And they're like, how do you explain our conversion being down? You need to ask, you need to do like a questionnaire and see, get some like a survey. But when I want to buy a product, especially a SaaS product that is pricey like yours, I always look at, see what type of support content I have available, because the last thing I need is, for example, my favorite SEO tool was SEMrush, because the amount of content they have on their website, they have a lot of thought leadership content, they have a lot of support content. SEO is ever changing, they stay on top of the trend. And I think there's something to be said about CMOs not thinking about just adding values to the customers, right? We should go longer retention that you're saying.
Like I'm a huge fan, as you know, of HubSpot. Same thing.
Yeah, HubSpot,
great content. I mean, you can figure out everything with them, and they have great certifications, and products easy to use. So that's why people stay with it.
So any advice for the new CMOs, the people who want to become CMOs? Do you have any tips for them?
From what standpoint, Al?
From just how to become better CMOs. I think one of the things you said a long time ago is when I was transitioning away from being a consultant into agency owner, I'm like, Mark, do you have any tips for me? How do I become a better leader? And you said you don't have to become a better leader. You just you said you want to empower your team. You want to enable your team. So that was, I don't know if to use those words exactly, but I think that's what you said. And I wanted to see if you have to give any tips to CMOs today. Something like high level general, what would it be?
Yeah, the best advice, I'll say job specific advice, and then there's like the soft skills advice. So we'll maybe take the soft skills first, but I think it's back to what I said maybe at the beginning of the podcast, which is it's all about teamwork, and you're never going to have everyone in-house that you're desiring to hire and so on. And it's becoming even more fragmented now with more and more technologies and data sets out there where you could never hire enough people internally. And the key is, how do you still get your job done, but now you're working with external entities? And so I think the more you can collaborate better, instead of just leading from top down, right? It's more enabling those teams, whether they're internal or external, to help you is key. And I think as part of that, one of the biggest things is transparency, and let people know where you're at, where things stand. And some people are afraid of that because maybe they're not doing so well in certain areas, and so they don't want to show that. So I think that's one of the mental hurdles that you have to get over of, you know what, it is what it is. And if you don't show your weaknesses or where the business is less healthy, no one can help you then. And so you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So I think on the soft skill side, it's really about teamwork and collaboration that are so critical, and evolving with the changing times, that more and more people are remote, more and more teams are external, and that's how life works to get things done. And then I'll say on the flip side of what should CMOs be focusing on, or up and coming CMOs should, be focusing, I think, on, gets down to two things. It's first party data and content. And if you're not doing those things, you're going to get left way behind. I was actually advising a client that I have right now, because they don't have a strong content presence on their site. And they're like, yeah, you keep talking about content. What should we do? Should we just write a blog, build a blog? And I first was excited to just be like, yeah, do a blog, let's do it. And then I actually took a step back and thought about it. I was like, you know what? Let's just go straight to video, right? Let's just do video. And all the great content that you could produce, let's produce it as video, because we can always turn it into text-based content. But I think the market is rewarding video now. And all this idea of writing content, text, it's not rewarded as much, and no one's reading it anyway. So videos, at least people are watching and engaging with. So I think producing video content at scale is key. And then, as I said, first party data is the absolute must. If you don't have first party data, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think there's a fear of creating video. I was afraid of it for a long time, but now we have all these tools available, and it could be as easy as creating a webinar or a podcast like this one, right? And what we do is that we usually turn a podcast into, we summarize it, it becomes a blog post. And then from the podcast, we create YouTube Shorts. There's a lot we can do with the video content, and
That's right.
I think I'm just transitioning away from being a consultant into an entrepreneur, and I'm learning a lot. So yeah, it is definitely more of I want to say, class for me right now, and I'm learning a lot. So I appreciate that. In one of our calls, you brought up this concept of retail media networks, and we work with a lot of e-commerce and direct-to-consumer e-commerce, and I think they focus so much on the website and e-commerce, which is great, but it sounds like they have an additional opportunity through retail media networks. If you don't mind explaining to our audience what a retail media network is and how marketers can utilize it.
Yeah, so there's two flavors. There's retail media networks and commerce media networks. And a retail media network, think of it like Amazon. Amazon is a retailer, and now you can buy tons of ads on their site to promote your product. And in some ways, you have to buy ads on Amazon if you want to get anything sold. And so you're finding a lot of major retailers, including the Walmarts and Home Depots and others, building out basically the concept of an ad network. Home Depot has something called the Orange Apron Network that basically is their retail media network that does the same conceptual thing as Amazon, only because they have physical stores and a physical presence, they can also do some things that are unique and different from Amazon, right? Where Amazon is purely online in their channels. The cool thing about Home Depot is they're physically located in our cities and have employees at the stores and have people to answer questions. And the concept of the retail media network is basically an outgrowth of what Amazon started. And now retailers are finding ways to build their own and do it in a unique way. And then what's going even further is commerce media networks, which is basically companies who don't necessarily have a retail kind of presence, who aren't like a physical store, like a Home Depot or Walmart or a grocery store like Ralph's or something. Think of it like United Airlines. So you can buy media across United, but it's not just on their website, right? It's in their app, it's on the airplane, right? So there's lots of different ways that now, if you're interested in engaging with United's audience, you can do it in a much easier manner than ever before. And so you have retail media networks on one side, which are typically driven by retailers with retail locations, and then commerce media networks that are now driven by major brands that have an interesting collection of digital properties, digital assets, as well as offline assets. United Airlines, because again, back to United, they have their lounges at the airport and they can do stuff there. They have the actual airplane that they can put stuff on. They have the app. So many different ways now that brands, if that's their audience that they're trying to reach, can engage and get more direct to these audiences through these retail or commerce media networks. And I think that's super exciting, because what's interesting about it is that, like, think of if you're the CMO of United, like, you're not just on the buy side anymore, you're on the sell side. And that's like another, like, I have to sell ads now. Like, how do I do that? Like, I don't sell anything, I buy things. And so maybe back to your comment on CMOs, what do they have to think about is you have to understand the sell side just as much as the buy side, because you could be missing opportunities there. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So if you want to go further, we can happy to chat about that more. But retail media and commerce media networks are just the hottest thing right now.
And I think that since they also have their own loyal customers, there's a lot of opportunity there.
They have brands that are directly wanting this, right? Think of Home Depot. How many different brands do they deal with in their stores? All the tools companies, plants, lighting, fixtures, plumbing, appliances, and stuff. All those brands are natural fits to augment what they're doing to drive visibility within Home Depot. Same thing with United. They already have corporate partnerships, a base of people they're trying to reach. So let's just extend that a little bit further into their model. So there's like a natural fit for brands that are already working with a retailer or a business to extend the relationship and gain visibility or further awareness into the audience that these networks have access to.
Yeah, definitely something for many companies to leverage. I guess since we are running short on time, I wanted to switch topics to AI. Obviously, that's what everybody's talking about today, and I think it's reminding me a lot about the .com days where like everybody wanted to have a website, but they had absolutely no idea what to do with it. How do you cancel the noise and utilize AI as you should as a marketer?
Man, that's a good question, Al. No, what I was
Let's go
going to
ahead.
say is, look, everything's AI now. So I think I laugh because I've been dealing with AI for coming up on nearly 20 years. And it's just an interesting topic because, like you said, a lot of young people, newcomers into the space and thinking AI never existed and it just was invented 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then there's old people like me and you that have been dealing with it for years and seen it evolve. And many ways, it's just a form of automation. And the real question is, what can the automation do for you? And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of the best use cases of it is automating things that couldn't be done before. There's a tool that I love to use called Evolve AI. It's a landing page optimization tool, and it can give you infinite permutations and combinations of assets or elements on a page. And as a marketer, it's great because I could never create all the A to B tests to do what they can do on their platform. I can give them 1,000 different elements and they'll mix and match it all up and ultimately determine what works best for whatever conversion event that I'm trying to achieve. That's a great use case for AI because it's just, I could never envision doing it and doing it fast enough to see meaningful results. And so those kind of things I think are tremendous. Certainly the Gen AI stuff's interesting. I don't think it's there yet, but it's not going to, I've talked about this, I think before. It's like, so it's a tool. It helps you, but it's not a replacement. And I think that's where people get maybe misaligned around what AI is. It's not here to replace you. It's here to help you. It's a tool. So how do you embrace the tool to be more efficient, more creative, and so on? And I think when you start to apply it that way, it can be really useful. And again, where there's need for automation and speed, then take advantage of it. I'll just say this because I deal with a lot of like personalization and recommendations kind of stuff. And I'm a big fan of that tech enablement that needs to be out there more because most personalization and recommendations is more manual. Like people don't realize it, but it's behind the scenes. Someone goes into an e-com platform and if someone buys this, sell them these 3 other things. And I think part of it is like, that's a great use case to just let the technology, I was like a joke, play old school. It was like, just let the computers do it. And I think personalization and recommendations is huge. There's a couple companies that I love working with and they can take on massive volumes of data and then they're better than what a human guess could be. So it's like, why wouldn't you use that tech?
Yeah. No, it's definitely, you want to be in the driver's seat. You don't want it to replace you. We use it a lot for brainstorming content or when we are creating content, but also we use it a lot for data analysis. I give it a big, huge subset of data and I'm like, analyze this for me. This would have taken me or my data scientist like hours a lot of times. And I think if you ask the right questions and you provide the right data, you can get pretty good results and automations, as you mentioned. So that's really good. There's a good amount of application.
I think it's like anything though, especially as a senior leader, if you don't what the outcomes relatively should be, then it's going to be hard for you to use these tools. I used to work in the film industry when I was younger, and that's what I went to college for. The director on a film knew how to operate the camera, set the lightings, run the electrical, do the audio. Even though they weren't doing that job, they knew how to do all the jobs. And I think that's important. Back to maybe your CMO question. The CMO has to know how all these things work in order to orchestrate them the best to achieve the goals of the business. And I think CMOs who just outsource things blindly, they're the ones that are missing out, because then it's how do they know what they're really getting? How do they know that the answers that AI is giving it are really the right answers, or so on? And yeah, I'll share a funny story, because I was dealing with a company that specializes in data and analytics, as you're talking about. And they're proud of their platform, could churn through large amounts of data and come up with results. And they showed me some results from, I think it was like a hair coloring company that they were analyzing. And they're, look, blondes buy more of this company's hair coloring products. I was like, okay, cool. Now what do I do with that? And they're like, all they could fall back to was the data point. Blondes buy more. Does that mean I change all my ads to have blondes in it and they're going to buy more and I forget about brunettes and redheads? Or conversely, do I change my ads to be more brunettes because I want to grow that market segment? And that's the problem, because even AI can give you a result, but what do you do with it? And that's where you need to have some sense of the market, sense of your data, and sense of what to experiment with.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It's not all about the data, but what you do with that data, right?
Yeah, that example I gave, do we just keep doing what we're doing and it's great, or what changes? And like when you start to make changes, like where do we make changes? Do we make it on different platforms, spend more money on Google versus Meta versus Amazon?
A question I would ask you, why blonde buy your products more? What's wrong? What is it something with the messaging? Is it something with the pictures we have on a product?
That's the whole thing.
So there's a whole other
question. Like a data point. It's almost like you could have said anything. You know, like, what does it mean? And what do I do? That still is the missing element to all this. But those are very complex business recommendations. And even at that, AI can only give you a series and a score, because it doesn't truly know. So it'll score things, and then it gives you a list of top 10 things to do. Do you do all of them? Do you do one of them? So what I'm getting at is you need this next level of AI to do business simulation. And that's hard. That's even harder, right? Like all this AI stuff we're touching is just, it's basic tools, basic automation. And it's great for what it is. But until you get to this thing can simulate my business and run all these infinite permutations and combinations of different things that we might try to grow our business, the only people that are there are, funny enough, like people in Formula One. They have so much data and they have to make split decisions that they're computing these things on like when to bring in their drivers for a pit stop or when to do different things. And it's like, that's one of the few examples I've seen where people are truly simulating business in real time and then adjusting in that specific moment.
That's really good advice. I know we are running out of time. For our consumers, if you don't mind recapping about like where they can find you, what services you offer, and how they can connect to you, website, LinkedIn, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So again, Mark Kapczynski, I run a boutique consulting firm called Control Media with a K, Kontrol Media. And so that's the website, controlmedia.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just Mark Kap, or I think I'm the only Kapczynski on LinkedIn. So maybe my wife is on there too. Find either one of us. We run the business together. So you can find us there, or certainly just call Al and Al knows how to find me.
Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Maybe we can have you on again later. We can talk about other topics or some of this topic in more elaborated way. Again, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, have a good one.
Thanks. See you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.